Hey everyone, this is my wrap-up video for week 5 of the course. In a moment, I'm going to go over to my keyboard and walk through the solutions for the visualization assignment. Really wasn't a lot of stuff that came up in the feedback question on Knowledge Check 5, except people really like this last module about producing and consuming analytics. I think, particularly for MBA students, it's a very, very relevant topic. So I often find that students really appreciate this conversation. So anyway, there was no sort of confusion that came up there. Let me go over to my keyboard, walk through that solution file. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so I just wanted to go over the solution for the visualization assignment. In general, as I've been grading these assignments, people for the most part are getting these right. So I think I don't see any huge major issues or areas of confusion on this. But let me just quickly go through this. So we're using this data sold bike, new data set, and you just have to make sure that you're importing the Plot9 package. We're going to use ggplot for these graphs, okay? And the idea here is that I want a scatter plot with regression lines. I need to annotate a message, and I need to change some labels, okay? So first of all, scatter plot is geom point. To get the transparency, in a geom point layer, you would put your alpha command. In this case, I think I told you to use 0.2. Geom smooth, method equals LM. LM stands for linear model. That's what puts the regression lines on. And the reason we have 2 lines is because in the AES, the aesthetic layer, I have a color variable. And the color variable is a categorical variable. So if you've got a categorical variable that's color, if you add on regression lines, it's going to add on regression lines for each of those colors. The green's kind of hidden there. There are actually 3 lines here. Okay. To change the labels, I'm using a labs layer. I have a title, my X and Y axis. And then to annotate, I'm using an annotate layer. In this case, I'm annotating text, so I have to say text. The label is what I actually want to display. Okay. The X and Y coordinates is where I want to position this. I want to put this at -20 and Y equals 3000. I want to position it right here. HA equals left means I want to horizontally align this to the left. It's going to align this to the left right at that point, and then color is blue. Okay, let's look at the next one. Here's a box plot, okay? And we want to split this by weekday. So we're looking at bikes rented, which is my Y variable. My X variable is weekday. I actually gave you this code. So this scale layer is just specifying that I want to put this in the days of the week order. Otherwise, it will do it alphabetically. So you can use limits in your scale layers when you've got a categorical variable, not only to get rid of categories. So for instance, if I left out Saturday, it would have removed that from the graph, right? That's typically what we're using limits for, is to filter our data. But you can also use limits with categorical variables to specify the order of categories, okay? And again, I'm using a labs layer just to change a couple of the title and the y-axis. Okay, and then finally, this is a stacked bar chart. So here I'm looking at season on the x-axis. So I've got season on the x-axis, and I'm filling it with this high bike count variable, which is a true-false variable, okay? Keep in mind, when you're doing a bar chart, you're filling. You're not using color. If you use color equals high bike count, it actually doesn't fill in the bars. It just uses color for the outlines of the bars, which is not very helpful. So with bar charts, we use fill. We don't use color, okay? Position equals fill just specifies that all of the bars are going to go up to 100%. If you don't do that, then you're going to have bars of differing heights, okay? Again, I'm using labs to change some things. I'm adding a title. Notice for X, because I have winter, spring, summer, fall, I don't really need that axis label, so I just have quote, unquote. Fill equals bike rentals. That allows you to change the legend for the fill variable. So that's what I'm doing there, okay? Again, I gave you, let's see, I gave you this code for scale X. Again, that's just to specify the order of the categories. That's just like with the second question. I wanted you to change this from true false to less than median, greater than median. So you would do that with a scale fill discrete layer because I'm changing the fill variable. It's discrete because it's a categorical variable. And I'm specifying in the order that they appear. Okay, I think they appear false and true. I'm specifying what I want the labels to be. And then finally, I think I also wanted you to change the labels on the y-axis. That's scale y. I'm changing the y-axis. And the y-axis is continuous. It's actually the proportion. I don't actually have a y variable here. But with a bar chart, and when I use position equals fill, these are proportions. So all I'm doing is I'm changing the tick mark labels to display the numbers as percentages instead of decimals. Okay. A couple of you changed the colors. I did mark off 1 point for that just because I didn't ask you to change the color. I really wanted you to kind of create this graph to these specifications. And so I didn't want you to change the color. I wanted you to keep the default colors. Okay. So that is the visualization assignment. Let me know if you have any questions. But again, I think in general, I'm seeing people are doing really well with this assignment. Okay, hopefully you found that helpful. So for this week, all there is the final exam. So you just need to get that done by end of day on Friday the 7th. So our course ends on Friday, and then I have to really kind of start working on the grading and trying to turn around these grades relatively quickly. So everything just does need to get in by Friday. The course ends Friday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. You have 2.5 hours to complete the exam. You can't pause it once you start, so just make sure you've got a 2.5 hour chunk of time before you start that exam. A note, you're going to be writing some code in Jupyter Hub, testing some code, but you need to copy and paste that code into the Canvas exam. So I'm grading only on the exam. I'm not logging into people's Jupyter Hubs. You don't need to submit a Jupyter Hub notebook file. You're going to copy and paste all of your code, relevant code, into the appropriate questions in the exam. Okay, so just make sure you give yourself enough time to do that, right? Don't write all your code and not put it into Canvas, and then all of a sudden you run out of time, your Canvas exam closes, and you haven't answered all of those coding questions in the Canvas exam. It's really important you get the code in there. Okay, let me know if anything comes up, if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great week and good luck on the exam. Thanks.